Okay, hello. Hi, Kate.
Hi.
Um, I'd like to just introduce myself slightly, first of all. I'm Maggie Lightfoot, and I've been a student of Kate's for very nearly 20 years now. It's been a long time, and it's been a fascinating and exciting time at the same as well, because things have changed so much in the last 20 years with regards to teaching felt making, the city and guild system, and how the actual techniques of felting have changed so much since when I first started way back when it was mainly merino tops and nothing else, and all the different changes that have come. So we're going to sort of have a chat about what's happened, where they've gone, how Kate's adapted, and where we've been with it, and sort of just talk about our journey together, which will be really exciting.
I'm really looking forward to it. And I think, before I even met you, it was in the 90s when I started to make felt. And yes, it was merino tops. And I think we had about 30 colours. We didn't have this wealth of colour that is available now. And we all learned one way of making felt, which was in the cane blind. And it was before bubble wrap was introduced and things like that. So we went through a lot of towels, but we made good quality felt, and but we kept making flat pieces of felt. So, I was a very early member of the International Felt Makers Association, and we used to meet up and we'd go with our patterns and go, oh, you could make this garment in felt. So we'd make the pieces of fabric and then we'd cut and sew the garment. The first hat I made, it was made as the hood that the milliner would go and buy. And then we steamed it and stretched it on the hat block. And things like that. So we were very much finding our way with felt and looking to the traditional English skills as opposed to looking outward as to all the way we can do felt. And through the International Felt Makers Association, we've had annual conferences, workshops, and we've been able to share the felt. And that's where we came in, isn't it?
That's where we started coming in, and also the international. A lot of the felt makers that were in part of the International Felt Association, they actually travelled and went over to Mongolia and other places to actually see how felt had been made for centuries, yes, rather than, like you say, trying to adapt our techniques in textile to felt. They also brought back the way in which felt can be adapted to create what we wanted to create. Yeah.
And that was what kind of went on in the 2000 and noughts, which is where we started it. And we were based at Bentham, High Bentham, part of Craven College. And
in the dungeon.
In the dungeon, we have no daylight. We're in these shops down at the bottom of this arcade sort of thing. And but every time I came back, it was kind of like with something new, like the Norwegian wool. That was an early one that I came back with, and I came back with the sample, the first sample. As you say, we just worked in merino at that point. So this was such a fuzzy type of fiber, and the color blending and the softness of it, but also the malleability of it. It was a single layer and you could get it to felt into a solid piece. And that's kind of the Scandinavian way, that minimum fiber, maximum shrinkage, so that you get a really good solid fabric. And you loved it so much. You bought the company, didn't you?
I did set up the company. I absolutely loved it because it was such a different feel and a different way of felting, a slightly different technique to be able to get it to felt. And when it did felt, it was so hard wearing. It was gorgeous, but at the same time, still soft. So yes, I inquired. Well, my first question to you was, well, where can I buy it? And you said Norway. And so I did a lot of research and found a fantastic company and set up Norwegian Wool, which I've now passed on to somebody else. I've passed on to Artisan now because, I'm getting older and I want to spend more time making felt rather than selling the products.
But it's just an amazing fibre, and it behaves differently. And that was, I think that was the same conference, although it could have been a different one, because you felt it very differently to the cane blind and the rolling. And I'd never come across a different way of making felt. And so this was very much just rubbing it gently and then kneading it and then throwing it. And it was being kneaded far earlier than I would have dared to do it and things like this. So I learned an awful lot about the touch and the feel of the felt and being able to read it, the felt feliometer, and what the different stages are, but also how different fibres respond to being felted in different ways. And the use of different equipment. I remember you coming back from a conference where you'd taken Norwegian wool and you'd been working on a rubber mat. And we started using rubber mats, particularly for apparel, because it was a much more flexible fabric than the cane blanket gave us. So we just started to really learn to respond to things, didn't we?
And it was lovely because there were so many different ideas coming in from so many different areas that, sort of it was a case of, well, let's try this, let's try that. We got into doing loads of different samples, trying, very thick ones, very thin ones, trying to laminate, trying to Nuno, and incorporating other substances like bits of plastic and various things that we didn't want to throw away, but we wanted to see if we could reuse. So we got into loads of different sampling techniques as well.
I did, and I've pulled out my sample folder, from that time. And we tended to do double-sided samples because they were quite big, and I think we started off sort of 50 by 50, and that allowed us to see whether the technique shrank or grew and things like that. So, here I'm using my hand spun, and it's with Norwegian and looking at rug quality. Here I've sort of gone Nuno, and you can see I've used a metallic gauze that ruckled as soon as it wet, and that ruckling came straight through, but the same fibre as the rug sample. So I was really looking at the sublime and the ridiculous coming together. And I think, we did a lot of that and discovering if things got sucked in, whether it would hold, sort of colour blending, colour mixing, using, other colours on the back to come through. And we just explored and experiment. And we call this sampling for design. And in actual fact, it's a third of what we do in City and Guilds. And we talk a lot about design. We talk a lot about making good quality products. But this exploration of materials, of processes, of techniques, particularly looking at a design idea, it's just so exciting to do.
And the other thing we started doing at the same time was using different fibres, wasn't it? And seeing whether there was a difference between the fibres and how the fibres reacted with each other. And again, putting different colours behind to see whether it came through or whether it sank in. And did lots of different, we introduced alpaca a bit, and
we just did all sorts of things and just really open. And it was such a learning experience, wasn't it?
Oh, yes.
To look to the traditional and to see how we could expand and explore through the different processes and techniques and equipment and fibers and things, wallpapers. That was one that came back from making a rug within the IFA. Beads in
it. Trapping.
The idea that you could weight something and things in Norwegian. My hate colour in Norwegian. Yeah, do you remember? I used to complain.
I do.
About peach. I could never make the peach work and things, but trying the Norwegian with chiffon, just really exploring.
That's an interesting one, the cobweb, because the technique of change, the way in which we used to make cobweb and then how that's developed and to making it completely differently now is another way in which the techniques just changed.
Absolutely, because when it started, we were in a cane blind, and so you were rolling and shrinking and then having to stretch. So you were actually rolling and unrolling every 20 rolls. Now I just make it in thin plastic above and below, and I rub, and I make it completely flat, so that it can't shrink, and therefore the holes are formed. Because basically cobweb is felt that you don't allow to shrink. So instead of the holes closing up, the holes are in there. And I, really enjoy that way of making it. And it's great because it can be really, really quick now. And so we make a lot of cobwebs now that we can layer and use them like half felts to make that deep, deep, rich mixture of color.
Well, the other thing that wasn't available back then when we were, or was not very much around, was the pre-felt.
Yeah, the needle felt.
The needle felt that you can now buy, and you can stretch and you can do what you want with it, and you can dye it. But we didn't have that available back then.
No, not at all. So we were always starting with the fibre and coming through. And, it was just really exciting. And one of the things that we did, I remember reading in the magazine that comes out with the International Felt Makers Association about Shetland wool and how good Shetland wool was. And so I ordered some of each of the 4 colours, and it arrived just as I was leaving to come and teach you. And I said, right, I've got it in the car. I haven't had a go with it yet. We'll look at it next week. And you all went, no, we're looking at it
now.
So you all grabbed it and started to work with it. And you were really struggling. It was going into holes, and you were going, no, this isn't very good. It's not very good. It was great for me because you made all the errors. And then I could walk in and go, I know how to make this. And we learned that it was very lofty and that it spread in those early stages. So instead of rubbing outwards, you had to rub inwards in order to contain the fibers. And once we could do that, we were able to felt it, and it felted beautifully. And of course, there were all the beautiful, beautiful colors. And here I've got what I now tend to start with, which is a base of the naturals, either laid out as fiber or as a mosaic, because I love these natural colors coming through. And that was something that I started to think about after an IFA conference. And there'd been a workshop which was still life, and people had done these beautiful fiber paintings, absolutely beautiful fiber paintings, but they were all on a white fiber background. And when they felted them and the white fibers came through, they kind of bleached out. So you lost the depth of the darks that had been put in. And it's always that juxtaposition, isn't it, of events and things and the connections that you make. Because very swiftly after that, I went to Kendal to the Quaker Tapestry and saw that the background fabric, and I've got a piece here that they use, they actually commissioned it to be created from natural British wools. And it's a blend of natural British wools that will give a skin tone, but also give the stone of buildings and brick buildings. So they were able to stitch outlines and things and use this to be the bulk and the mass of the embroidery. And that kind of got me thinking to, painting, and how traditionally in oil painting, you would create an underpainting in browns, and then you would put the color on top, but you would establish that tonal range. And I thought, oh, can I use these natural fibers? Because we've got the very, very dark, we've got the very light, we've actually got a warm and a cold mid-tone. Can we establish that tonal range first and then build up on top? And this is a sample where I've played around with light and dark, and it's actually Bergschaft with merino over the top, but you can see the difference that the dark has made and that the light has made to the colors. And it's not this is good, this is bad, it's that this is dark and moody, and you know, and this is light and bright. And I just find that really exciting, that you can really play with that. And you know, we were really lucky to have Carolina Arbolomi come over and do a workshop with us. And it was really interesting to see that over in Finland, with the fibers that she was using and the techniques she was using, she'd come to the same conclusion.
Yeah.
Which was just really exciting. But, you know, I quite often will put, you know, these sort of things going on underneath, and then having them come up through. And I just find that really, really exciting to create that light, and sometimes to plan it, as I have in this piece here, which is a piece that's from my flower series. And it's actually an amalgamation of one of my flower paintings and a drawing that my son did when he was about 2 or 3 at the side of me. And I put his drawing over the top in threads. But I wanted the light to be light, and I wanted this to be mid, and then the weight down here, dark. And so I've done that. And I actually used Blueface Celesta for this, because I wanted it to be softer than the real dark of the Shetland. But both Blueface Leicester, Shetland, they work brilliantly for this type of technique. And I just really, really love it. Absolutely love it.
It was around this sort of time that the city and guilds or the government started pulling money from the adult education as well, wasn't it? And we had to, and I remember you having to sit down and replan how you were going to deliver what needed to be delivered, and how we could adapt everything to actually fit with this, and how we could use the other colours behind as well. And it all sort of happened at the same time for you to be able to, well, I remember it was a lot of headaches.
Yeah, we had a lot of change very, very quickly.
Yes, it all happened at once, didn't it?
And Craven College eventually had to close down its rural centres, and as the government pulled the plug on funding for creative subjects. And at the same time, Debbie Bird, who was our external verifier for City and Guilds, she could see the writing on the wall, and she was setting up Artie Bird. And she invited myself and Peter Stanier, who's a great drawing tutor over Halifax Way, Hebden Bridge. And the 3 of us set up Artie Bird. And originally it was intended to be an online delivery. And in the same year as we were setting up, and I was having a baby, we lost the centre, and we lost the actual teaching. And it became really important to me, that realization that actually I love teaching people. I didn't just want to be a remote teacher. So I chatted to Debbie and said, can I have real people as well as people? And she was, she's a real enabler, is Debbie. And then I rang up my local high school at Carnforth and spoke to the head, John Shannon. He was so good. And he said, come round. He showed us all the spaces and this wonderful new technology suite that just been built. And we hired that space at the weekend, and we taught there, and the rest was done from the back bedroom. But we also had to rejig all the syllabuses, because we moved from the design and craft to creative textiles, and we had to restructure everything. And it worked. We
got there.
And it was really, really exciting to do that. And yeah, a huge change, massive change.
Well, we actually had daylight coming into the school for a start from the windows. Yeah. We actually had lots more space so that we could actually spread out and get bigger projects undergo and all the rest of it as well. So that was really exciting, and moved a lot of stuff in different directions, which was great.
Give a shout out to the caretaker there, Andy, who was just amazing. And he was so supportive. He actually retired last week. And you know, but we had to actually go up 2 flights of stairs, so we were up and down the stairs, and although there was a lift, quite often it was a bit juddery, so we were physically very fit indeed, and we were running up and down the stairs. But it was just such a buzz and such a thrill, and we ended up with well, another project that came along with that, and it was kind of with the Norwegian wool. Do you remember our trip to Glasgow? And we went to see an exhibition on Mongolian felting.
Yeah.
And it was amazing because there was the traditional and then there was contemporary, and how that sort of fusion of came through in terms of how they used mosaic technique to join things, but also they kept putting cords into things, and there was this beautiful portrait of a lady, and just 2 or 3 cords with beads for her hair, and the rest were in the flat felt, and we were just so taken with this. So much so.
We kept going back to it. We kept walking around the whole exhibition and admiring the mosaic, admiring the stitching that they do and everything else. And we just we both kept going back to this one piece.
Yeah. And then we saw the Queen.
Yes.
And the Queen, it was just this chaos of cords, of, you know, it's almost like the scrap bag had just been taken and felted together. And it was thick and it was delicious. And you couldn't afford it, I couldn't afford it, but between us, we could afford it. So we share it, don't we?
We do. We have 6 months each.
Could we go and visit the Queen, please?
We could go and visit the Queen, yes. Hang on. Take you on a journey. Yeah. Right, we will go out here. And because the Queen is hanging up here, there's other belts on the way. Because, you know, you always have belts up, don't you? And hang on, let me see if you can see it.
That's perfect.
That's the top of the Queen, and she goes all the way down. You can see her face, and then there's all these cords all hanging all hanging off the bottom and going. That's why she hangs in the stairwell, because she's very, very long.
Yes, those legs do carry on forever, don't they? And I just love this Queen with her crown, and then all the subjects swirling around her with her responsibility for caring for these people. And it just absolutely stunning. So we share the Queen, and she's been a huge inspiration for us both in terms of felt making. Thank you, Maggie. And I came back and started to work on some of the techniques using the Norwegian wool, using the colours coming through, but also the idea of the cords, of the balls, making tassels, dingles, dangles and protrusions. And I was working on this at Leighton Moss, RSPB Leighton Moss, at their summer fair, and the car park flooded, and we were in wellies because you were sitting with me, and the water was coming up in the tent whilst we were making it. But I was going to finish it because I couldn't move it. But it taught us how we can manipulate as well as the colour fusion. Because again, I'd been working with the Norwegian, and this is about 7 layers of colour in its cross section, in order to be able to bring that colour mixing through. And we were really starting to understand how the Norwegian worked in terms of colour mixing.
Yeah.
And then we got the opportunity with the Yorkshire Agricultural Society to, they had a new building headquarters with a mezzanine floor, and they wanted a piece of felt that was 6 meters tall by 3 meters wide, of an iconic Yorkshire image. And so we worked with them, and we did the David Hockney project.
Yeah, oh, that was so much fun. And again, it was incorporating how we could utilize all the students that we had at the time of all the different levels, and weave it into the City and Guilds course.
Mammoth, absolutely
fantastic.
Mammoth. You know, the only way we could do it, I mean, first of all, we chose the image going up Garraby Way, Road. And David Hockney, bless his little cotton socks. Thank you so much, Sir Hockney. Thank you so much. Gave us permission to use this image. And the only way that we could do it was to split it up. And each student became, and member of staff became responsible for a section. Each of those sections had to end up as a metre wide. And we had tables that were 120 centimetres square at the school. So we had to start off there and bring them down to size in order to do it. But we had people who'd been with us a year, people who'd been with us 10 years, and they were at different levels of education and knowledge. And it was going to take us a chunk of time. So we had to satisfy a chunk of the City and Guilds syllabus for each of them. But City and Guilds is just such a fabulous program that it allowed me to write in for every level a way in which we could use this as a real brief to do it. So we set off, and there were certain decisions that we had to make along the way, because we had to create a cohesive piece that didn't feel fragmented. So there had to be things that were stipulated that were the same for everybody. And then we had to give them the freedom to be able to work at their own level and with their own interests and put their own identity in. So the first thing that I did was I got everybody to create a panel, a collage, collage that was the finished size, so that they got a sense of the scale of their piece. And I worked on my collage at home and photographed it as I was going along. And at the time, I think Aidan was probably about 3. And Robin, my husband, he had to take Aidan out for the day to allow me the space to be able to make this collage. And so I painted up the papers, let them dry. I was working outside, it was a gorgeous day. And I was putting together this collage. And I reached the point where I'd got about half an hour before Aidan was coming home. And I'd one bit of blue paper and I had to tear the tree. And I froze. I couldn't tear this tree. And I thought, you stupid woman, what do you do? So I rang Alison up and I said, Alison, I can't tear a tree. And she went, go, Kate, go, Kate, go. You can do it, go, Kate, go. So I put the phone down, I went and tore a tree and rang her up and said, torn the tree, and then got on with it. But I just froze because I'd got this toddler coming in and I hadn't got time to remake the paper. And it's amazing. It's really interesting what can make us freeze on something. But we learned about the scale of it. We learned about the color palette. We learned that it's an incredible painting, Sir Hockney.
Yes. We had to look at it in so much detail, didn't we, to be able to represent, to recreate it.
Absolutely. And every section was just a brilliant composition. Nobody had this poor composition. So this is all the collages put together. And showing it. And what we realized was how important this road is. So we made some decisions. So everybody who had the road, I dyed fabric and everybody used the same fabric. So that was lovely. And you and I got together and we worked out the palette in paint.
Yeah.
And then we worked out the palette, matched it in wool.
Yeah, we dived into all the bags and pulled them out.
We pulled the house, didn't we? And we decided that what we needed was for everybody to use the same colours on the back.
Yeah. So
we selected this yellow, the turquoise, and the purple, so that would go under where we needed light, where we needed dark, and then under the greens or under the blues, it would work. So we had the base for everybody's felt was the same. They could pull from the bags to create the colours. So we spent a weekend doing the collages, and then they pulled out all the wool that they wanted and took it with them. And they were allowed to introduce one other element into their piece. And that would be the individual. Some people did embroidery, some people made wallpapers, some people, it was just amazing. I made cords.
Yeah.
Oh, because I
What a surprise. Maybe we're into our cord phase.
I was into my cord phase. And this is the final piece with all the felts together. And it looked absolutely fabulous. And that was mine with the cords in it. Which was yours?
I can't remember, to be quite honest.
No.
I honestly can't remember.
No, but we've got it there, and we've got this lovely road going through, and it's there in Harrogate, in the foyer of their buildings. So if you ever go to the Yorkshire Showground, please go in and see it, because it is absolutely fantastic. The great cafe there. So when we can open up again, go to the cafe. It's lovely fodder. But it was an amazing project, and we did it in 2 weekends. And we had, I think each piece was 1 kilo of wool. And we had to throw them to get the colour mixing in, and it rained. Rain. And so we were going up and downstairs with buckets of hot water, throwing them on the felts, and then picking them up and throwing them, and the water was going straight down the back of your neck. And I was wet. There was nothing on me that was dry. But fantastic weekend, and what an achievement. And dear Jeanette McEwen, who's one of my wonderful friends and students, unfortunately not with us anymore, but still very much part of my growth as both a teacher and as a felter, she just turned to me and said, I don't know anybody else who could have delivered that. So I took that as a great accolade. So really, really proud of all of that. And it was kind of a couple of years after that, we started to put people in for Medals for Excellence awards with City and Guilds. And for 3 years in a row, we were awarded the Medal of Excellence. And there's only one for the whole of constructed textiles for the world, given every year. And it's only given if there is that level of excellence. They don't award it if it's not just that you're the best of that year. You have to hit that level. And we were awarded that 3 years in the row. And on the 3rd year, we also got one for creative computing. And sneakily, the students collaborated with Alison to put me in for a Medal for Excellence as a tutor. And you were part of the team that went to Manchester, to Salford, to receive them. But I have my Medal for Excellence here as a teacher of constructed textiles, and it's one of my most treasured possessions. And I just love the back of it. Let me see if I can get it out, because on the back of the medal there is the emblems of all the guilds of London. And it is just the most beautiful thing I just think it's stunning. And that was 2015 that we went, and we were awarded 3 Medals for Excellence that year as a centre. And it was just such a special day that will stay with me forever. So thank you for coming with us and being part of that.
It was lovely. It was just such a lovely day to know that, how hard that you had worked and how hard everybody else had worked to be able to achieve that standard was just wonderful.
Yeah, I just, and I think that was one of the things that, we're a small centre and we're in a bubble and we don't know what we're achieving. We just keep working and growing and developing, and eventually we moved out of the school and got premises, and we're now in our Artie Bird premises, and that's made a whole new story, because we've been able to buy equipment that we can leave that's static. We're not moving in and out. Students can leave out work. We're not spending Sunday afternoon moving things out of space, so there's more teaching. So one that we didn't realize when we moved here, that that the quality of the work would improve again,
And those Medals of Excellence sort of started a little bit more of a springboard, didn't it, to say, actually, we must be good. We must be creating good felts and good designs, and good products.
Mm.
And that meant that it gave us it gave you and the rest of us the confidence to say, well, yeah, let's do this. And that's, of course, that led to the accreditation as well. So it sort of took us through the next phase, which is to where we are now. And having started back in the dungeon, back in High Bentham, where we were experimenting with different wools because we hadn't heard of the wools before, because they hadn't been used before, and looking at the techniques that we brought in from other countries instead of just adapting. And slowly through all those processes, you've always managed to keep up with it and keep a step ahead and introduce things before they've been introduced at other places and all the rest of it, and really sort of trailblazing. And then we got it through to the accreditations, which is where we are now.
Yes, and I mean, I think that's been such an exciting journey because it's been happening through felt, and I don't think there's many areas of textiles where it's been so new, for considering it's such an ancient craft. There've been people, instead of just us cutting up fabric and sewing it together, they're making garments around templates, that are seamless, or, and hats are no longer steamed and stretched, they're shrunk onto the block. There's a real understanding now of what felt as a fabric is. And, and to have been part of that journey with so many felters, great felters, has been such an exciting time. And that's been recognised so much by City and Guilds, because when the funding ran out for the design and craft syllabus of suites, the suite of syllabuses that City and Guilds do, and straight away they stepped in and invited us to join the accreditation department, who worked with us and been amazing, absolutely amazing. And what it allowed me to do was to take the best of everything I'd experienced and put it into our own programs and create that identity. And it was a really, really challenging but brilliant time, because the accreditation department are trained in critical thinking, so they know how to question you in order for you to realize what it is you want to do. And we were exhausted after every session, but so stimulated by it. And Kate Ryan came on board with us that year, and she brought her great wealth of and depth of knowledge as well to that process. And it was through my MA that I studied why the expressive art syllabus that I taught was so good. And I understood that it was this rhizomic thinking, this thinking across space, across time, this creative that shoots up from anywhere and then connects and things. And, I've been able to write that into the programs so that they truly reflect creativity.
Well, the thing with it is it's not only felt now, because those courses go across different textiles. They go into embroidery, they go across into the dressmaking, they go across into weaving, and also they adapt through into the creative computing and the other programs that we use, and it covers the whole base of everything that you can have a go at.
Absolutely. And we've seen the creative textiles come out of that, where people are amalgamating the textiles and not just being on their own. We've got this crossover of mixed media textiles going on. So it's been so exciting to go from being quite not blinkered, but narrow to being able to broaden it out. We'd have never taught weaving without the centre. We needed the space and the ability to be here. And the same with the printing and the dyeing. We've been able to deliver so many things because we're now based at the centre, and with the help of the accreditation department, we have been able to set up the programs and pathways that we have that are looked at every year, and the quality and things are here and established, and we're running with it. And we've been able to take it beyond where the design and craft were into the fellowship. you know, so that we have that opportunity now to work, you know, and to continue that development of individuals and their path as makers. And it's been so exciting.
It's meaning that people can work at all the different levels and carry it through, or swap from one side to another. You know, people start off in perhaps in embroidery, then they go into weaving, then they perhaps come into felt making, and they can swap and cross over, because the basis is there all the time. But it also means there's still chance, and we're finding this in the fellowship, and I'm finding it when I invigilate the other courses. There's still innovative, I can't say that word. Innovation or innovative thinking coming through, and things are still being developed and tried and tested, and people are going out to other workshops and coming back with other ideas, and then they're incorporating them. So it's that growth which is huge and continuing, which is absolutely, it's just so exciting.
It is, and that's the Artie Bird community, isn't it? And it goes out, it comes in, it goes out, it comes in. And I think it's also, you know, we talked earlier about the sampling for design being a third of City and Guilds, and we talk a lot about the importance of design, the sampling for design, and then the actual making of items. And I think it's that is the heart of City and Guilds, that came right from the beginning all the way through, and how they feed into each other to make individual artists and makers. And I think because we have that established, people are able to be themselves and be able to turn into themselves as artists and not Katie clones, because that's not what we're about. And certainly my work is completely different. My personal work is completely different to what I teach, but I've certainly developed as an artist, as a maker, you know, as a teacher, all the way through as a creative person. I have developed so much over the 20 years I've been delivering City and Guilds, because of the structure and the ability to do it. And, you know, I've mentioned Debbie Bird, who set up Artie Bird, and, you know, she's now following a path that's her own art rather than being within Artie Bird, as is Peter, and it's just here now, although we've got centre in Australia. You know, but I also want to give a shout out to Margaret Walker, who was our external verifier with City and Guilds for a long time. And she was just, I treasured the times when she came to visit.
Just so supportive and so
knowledgeable
and so positive, and gave us so much information, which was, and stood up for us and everything, which was so good.
Yeah, and I mean, amazing. And you know, we're still under the approved banner, because we can deliver the full-time course if people want that. But most of what we cover now is under accredited and a part-time courses, so that people can study and work and study and work. And then it's affordable and can be done in their own time scale as well. So, but we've got an incredible structure of professional courses now, which are ours, and just, I love them to pieces.
And it's been great chatting to you about the whole development of it all, and how we've got from where we were and incorporated everything that's changed as we've gone along through the years, and embraced everything, really. So thanks ever so much for chatting this morning. It's been great. I've really enjoyed reliving some of the times that we've been through. It's been lovely.
Thank you, and thank you so much, Maggie, because you know, I remember you coming into my garage on my felt and fiddle day to sort of go, Kate, I want to do colour, and you're still with me. And we're still doing colour, and we're still learning about it.
Yeah, still getting there. Don't know quite where we're getting, but we're getting somewhere, and we're enjoying it along the way, which is all it's about. Yeah. Well, besides your face-to-face teaching, you've also, alongside this, always been developing the online, because of course that was where Artie Bird was going to be online courses. And when you started working so hard with City and Guilds to sort of, because the funding had gone and all the rest of it, and you started developing the online alongside the face-to-face, because it was the face-to-face you really enjoyed, but you also realized that actually I need to do online as well, because there's all these people out there that can't necessarily come for a weekend or whatever.
Absolutely, and also because every town used to have its city and guild centre, and suddenly they'd gone as well. So it was an opportunity for people to still feel connected and part of a community, and to be able to continue learning. And I mean, when I think about it, we started off in a back bedroom, sort of writing these courses, and I was doing it when Aidan was asleep and trying to do it. But we did PowerPoints that we turned into PDFs, and they went out on DVDs because there wasn't that ability to email things that size and all the rest of it. We had somebody doing the course overseas who we couldn't send it in. She had to come out to the United Arab Emirates and go back into where she was working so that she could access things. And people were posting things to us from all around the world. And then we used Huddle as a teaching platform. And in the early days, Debbie Bird worked with them to help them to develop something that could be used for creative education. And so we had a way to directly send modules and see work through this. They moved towards big business rather than education. So we then moved to Edmodo, which was free, which was great, but also aimed at schools. So we were asking adults of a certain age to get permission from their parents to be able to do things.
It just made me giggle. I thought it was hilarious, but it's, it worked for a while as a really good platform to be able to keep the community going and also incorporate the online students into the face-to-face community as well.
Absolutely. It was the first time that we managed to bring the two together, which was brilliant. But in the time that we've been with Edmodo, people at like LearnWorlds, Pathright, Kajabi, they have now written the virtual schools and colleges. So we've now we've bought into LearnWorld and we're using that, and it's working very well. So we are growing our online courses. They've always been in the felt making, but we're now extending that and having shorter courses as well. And we've got this great community with the attending students, the online students, and they're able to talk and share together and be part of that community. So we're developing it, we're growing it, and I think we're very much there. But of course now we can video, we can, and it's brilliant what we can do, because, we were there before people were doing online education, and now we're able to really work with that and enhance it and change it and change what we offer. But I think the thing for me about the online was when you realize that the quality of the online work and the quality of the attending work are the same.
Right.
We know we've hit that right, that education, because I think people naturally think that if it's done online, it's not going to be as good. And what the onliners miss out on is the community, but now we've got that community, and we're able to share ideas and things right around the world.
Right around the world. And the other thing that it's also done is that you often ask the students, what would they like? Where do they feel there's a gap, or where would they like it filling in? And that covers the online students as well as the face-to-face, so that if somebody says, oh, I'd like a little bit more design, or I'm not quite sure about this area, you can develop the video and develop the thing there, and it can go out to everybody, not only face to face when they come for a weekend or midweek or something. So it actually expands that as well, which is really, really exciting. And because I come in and I do some of the internal verifying and quality control, it's really exciting to be able to see it all the way through, which is great. And you always hit the mark. It's fine.
Thank you very much, boss.